Welcome to Mayhem to Mastery, leading transformation from the middle, with your hosts, James Thompson and Ronii Bartles. In each episode, we will interview change agents, operators, and advisors who have learned to drive results without relying on formal authority. From process optimization to strategic communication, and yes, even competitive compliance. We break down what it takes to lead well when you're in the middle of it all. Mayhem to Mastery, leading transformation from the middle, is a podcast for leaders navigating the messy, high-stakes space between top-down strategy and frontline execution. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and on our website, concentricglobal.co. Now here's the hosts of Mayhem to Mastery, leading transformation from the middle, James Thompson and Ronii Bartles.
Hello, and welcome to Mayhem to Masteries. I'm Ronii Bartles, and James Thompson is my co-host here today. Today, our guest is Tom Browning, and Tom splits his time between Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, and Cincinnati, Ohio. But no matter where he is, he's always at the center of entrepreneurial energy and community. We're really excited to have Tom today because his background is definitely varied, from early leadership at Procter & Gamble, later at the Coca-Cola Company. Most recently, though, he's been in mentoring entrepreneur ventures, and so we're really excited to talk to him today about mayhem and chaos and how we can get to mastery.
Thanks for having me. Good morning to all.
Good morning.
Morning, Tom.
So, James, do you want to talk about how we know Tom?
Yeah. Tom and I met through a club that we're a part of called VentureSouth here. It's a kind of a early seed investor, angel investor group here in the Southeast. And we also bumped into each other soon thereafter at the Harbor Entrepreneur Center. So, after you see folks a couple of times in the same spaces and really enjoy what they're saying, you go up and start a relationship. So Tom and I are fairly new to one another, but Midwest roots, and my dad loves the Cincinnati Bengals. So I figured there's some overlap there. And so we grabbed Tom, and I really like specifically what he's doing in our community as a transplant from the Midwest to help with his vast knowledge in an array of different companies that he's worked with, but helping those new businesses, founders, just really enjoy what he's doing there. So that's how we met.
Thanks, James.
Well, we're really excited to have you, Tom, and so I'm going to jump right into it. So I want to, the podcast is definitely about mayhem to mastery, and so we want to kind of talk to you a little bit about like what your experience has been going from, a very corporate kind of background to entrepreneurial background, where you kind of come across like just chaos and kind of how you wrangled that in and kind of moved things forward to be successful.
It's a major challenge. In fact, it's a challenge that some recruiters won't even hire someone from a major Fortune 500 for a small entrepreneurial company because they expect those resources to be there. And often they aren't. 99% of the time they're not. So you move from a Procter & Gamble, which is a fantastic training ground and a very systematic, process-driven company, which are really good skills to learn. Everything from running a meeting to writing a memo, you learn the best in class on how to do that. Those are very good things. Coca-Cola is also an extremely good place to learn a lot about marketing. I've got involved in M&A there as well and doing some new product development, which are really unique skills. And I was really happy to do those at the time. But I did have an entrepreneurial itch and moved into a startup before there was such a thing. And really the word startup and angel investing didn't even exist in the late 80s when this all happened. So myself and some Coke guys bought a company called Winterbrook Beverage Group, which was a new age beverage company. And I was old enough to remember it. At one time on the shelf, there was just things from Coke, Pepsi, and RC Cola, and there wasn't a lot else. So people started bringing new things on board. Snapple and Clearly Canadian were two of the big new ones. People were doing very well. We were excited about the idea. We bought a company that had a few existing products that were in distribution basically in the Seattle, Portland, Vancouver markets. And that was kind of it. And we thought, well, we're Coke experts. We'll just spread that across the country. That should be easy, right? No, not so much. a lot harder when you're on the outside looking in, and distributors are really the gatekeepers in that space. So we had struggled with that for years or so, and then we decided to buy a brand from a brewer in Chicago called LaCroix. And LaCroix sparkling beverage was really the reason we took off, and we're allowed to get our other products into distributors in the Midwest, particularly, basically for that Chicago market being key, but also Minneapolis, Milwaukee, Cleveland, Cincinnati, et cetera. So we were able to grow quickly, and we're in the Inc. 100 2 years in a row because of that, and end up selling the company National Beverage Corporation. Not under ideal circumstances, because we did have a lot of debt. We never really took on any bricks and mortar, but we did have a large amount of inventory of product and packaging and so forth. So anyway, that's the story. But to talk to your question about what's different is you look in the mirror, and that's who's going to help you. I mean, there's not a lot of resources. Every hiring decision is incredibly important, because you don't want to let those people go, and you really are careful. So you end up doing more and more and more work before you end up saying, I've got to hire this person full time, or bring this consultant in house, or whatever you might do. So it's that constant stretching of yourself and your team. You got to be cognizant of that, because not everybody's going to get up in the morning and be excited about that idea of another 12-hour day or working on the weekend. And it's a big issue in startups. It's just the founders are highly motivated because there's a carrot at the end, but sometimes the team isn't quite that excited. So that's the biggest change. Mayhem is what you want to avoid, but mayhem is part of the process when you're starting something. You just don't have all the answers. You don't have the processes in place. And most importantly, you don't have the people in place.
Yeah.
A quick question about the timing of Mayhem. Where do you see, sorry, Ronnie, where do you see Mayhem most? Is it in the early stages of a startup? Is it before or after an M&A? Where do you see it most?
Well, you personally ingest it most at the startup point. When someone else buys it and they own it, it's like, yeah, there's mayhem in transition. And almost always, in every one of the cases I've had to exit, I was the guy they ended up hiring on the earn-out to see the transition through. And there's issues there, because you're a change agent within a new company where you have no relationships. And sometimes you even looked as an adversarial relationship, because sometimes they bought you to fix a problem. They had to acknowledge that there was a problem in the sales organization. An example of that was, so we started after the beverage industry. I had some pretty severe non-competes, so I got out of the industry completely and started into the packaged salad industry, which wasn't even a thing in the early 90s. So we started a company that eventually became Fresh Express and was acquired by Chiquita Brands in 2006, excuse me. And the CEO of the company said, these guys at a sales organization meeting, the reason we bought Fresh Express is they know it has sell value. They understand the value proposition. They understand how to go to market. We haven't been doing that, and basically dismissed the entire sales organization of Chiquita, which is one of the largest produce companies in the world. Like, you guys all are terrible. These guys are our saviors. And that's how you get the process started, right? Now you're supposed to lead this team collaborativly, right? It's
with now a target on your back is the new guy coming in, changing everything.
Absolutely. and in a business that's got its own level of complexities, that's something you can't underestimate. Every business has got nuance and complexity, and the banana business certainly is that way, because it's all about logistics in that space. Mm-hmm. So that kind of is an example of the mayhem happening after the sale. But generally, a lot of the mayhem happens early days, and then as you try to grow. I mean, the next big step forward. In the salad business, we had a unique process. Everything had been built in California. California grew the product, it was processed there, and then shipped across country in bags. The difference we took was we started doing regional processing, and we put facilities in Cincinnati, Atlanta, Chicago, and Pennsylvania, where we started shipping whole heads of lettuce from California, Arizona to those places, then chopping them, mixing them, and bagging them. And then we also had technology where we were putting modified atmospheres in the bag, and then breathable films that match the respiration rate of the individual plants. So that would give you the shelf life required to get through. And that was a major change, because then the retailers of the world, the Krogers of the world, could order with much shorter lead times and get closer to the inventory requirements they have. So we made it a lot easier on the retailer, and that's why we grew very, very quickly. And it was a fantastic, fast-growing business, and really was we're the angels of with Queen of the Prom for a long time. But it's a business that is saturated. It's about a $5 billion business in the United States right now, so it's definitely huge. And they've moved into more kits and chopped salads and stuff like that. But back in the day, it was really a hard thing to get that all right. When I heard the word mayhem, I thought to myself, when was the most mayhem I've ever experienced? And I'll tell you a quick one. And this is a sad story. And since I moved from Florida to Cincinnati to take on this role of rolling out this new brand of salads. And we had a facility in Philadelphia, one in Cincinnati, and then West Coast and Arizona as well at that point. Point being, like the first month in the job, we're having all kinds of packaging seal issues with the seals didn't seal up. We had foreign objects in the salads, everything from living foreign objects, the kind that hop, the green ones that hop. And then we're having all these issues, and customers are really having a hard time figuring out their orders because the inventory, the business is growing really quickly. Consumers are accepting it. They're not doing things right. There's a million things wrong. I'm there on a Saturday staff meeting, and the INS raids our facility. And like most workers in that kind of space, we hired them through labor brokers. I hadn't even got into that problem yet, but we didn't have paperwork for most of these folks. They hired as a group, and they all ran out the building, and we had no labor. So we had no product. Packaging was terrible, no labor. Had some transportation issues in there to boot. So that was probably the most, what you have to do is you have to break it down to what matters most at that time. And people talk about, multitasking. Really, you got a single task at that point. Say, let's fix this. Let's fix this. Let's fix it, and support the people in positions that are best able to do that, and give them the resources required. So that's, you work out of it that way, and you're also painfully honest with your customers, because you try to fake it at that point, you're going to get you make an enemy for life. So I think that's the other thing I would say. And mayhem is going to happen. Try to fix it as quickly as you can, but there's going to be points like that, and just try to be honest with your customers as quickly as you can and tell them the real story. So that was a tough one.
Yeah, that sounds like it. Well, and you kind of mentioned a little bit too about, when you kind of get in that situation, you sort of break it down on like, let's actually pull it back and be, single-minded as opposed to multitasking, which kind of resonates with me. I always kind of say we try and make everything as simple as possible. And, I tell people I don't put multitasking on my resume because I just don't think I could. It's just not possible. My brain doesn't work that way. So I find that very interesting on like, how do you break that down and figure out like what is the priority and really then rally the troops and going that way. Like, on a day like that, how does it start? Where does it go?
Well, that one was a multitasker for a little while, because you had a lot of fires put out at once that were there. I think the main thing you do at this point is say, what can we do? What can we actually execute against in the next few hours to make things better? And in that case, we were able to run some products without as much help. So you simplify your products line, your lineup a little bit, and you change some things in that case. And then you come up with a hiring plan that's radically different, because these brokers that had employed people for a long time were nowhere to be found. So in that case, we had a mixed approach to it. It wasn't a simple fix, because hiring people never is. It takes time to do that and find the right people. And if you go into these facilities, it's United Nations, and you've got people from all over the world that are working in specific roles. And they do like to work together, and it seems to work very well. But it's very difficult to hire folks just through Indeed and that kind of thing. It's not going to happen. So it took a while, and we had to be more aggressive. And what it meant by more aggressive is we had to pay a little better, which we're already paying a union wage, but paying a little better, and some signing bonuses, and also working with our first line managers, and not just keeping them. I'll give you an example. We were turning over foremen, essentially people in charge of a crew, at a pretty rapid rate as well. It wasn't just line workers. And so you had to give those folks a little more money, but also a little more respect, and do things like sponsoring softball teams and being part of the facility and part of the organization. So we worked hard at that too, making them feel part of the team. And that helped a lot too.
Two things I want to tease out there, Tom, real quick is one is prioritization in the midst of chaos. So a lot of times, or many times I've seen where highest cost or quickest, most efficient or volume kind of is king in prioritization. But the third element that you mentioned, which is ease of implementation, really is not seen as a part of the equation. And I think, once you can get some wins and get some momentum, that will help, the whole team with further execution. So yeah, that's a good one. I like
No,
that.
I think that's a really important point, and just sometimes you just got to get, just get some off your plate. I've got these things going, and I think that's part of, management team meetings are sometimes not as effective as one-on-ones with individual department heads and kind of making sure they're all aligned. But these people are already working long hours. To have them sit around a meeting, listen to other folks. Now, you have to collaborate. You have to be together on the same page occasionally. But in times of crisis, I think sometimes it's better to break it down into functional facility groups and work with those individually and give them the resources they need. But
yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to have more nightmares about those days now.
Sorry we brought it up.
30-some years ago.
Yeah. The second piece I wanted to...
Brown hair back then.
Oh, gosh. I think we all did. The second piece I wanted to tease out was that the frontline or frontline leader, and I see this all the time. It's the person that within the work cell or the work group that sticks around the longest, not necessarily given any mentoring and leadership or communication or handling conflict. That's a tough job.
Yes, they're pressure. They're in the middle of the sandwich, right? The pressure coming from the top and the lack of wanting to change on the bottom. They're the ones that have to execute that. So you've got to get them sold on why we're trying to do things. You can't just tell them to do it. You got to give them a little bit of information why this will make this outcome better. And I think that's part of the problem. You can't just bark out orders. You have to do a little bit of explaining and make them feel part of why. Make them understand why it will be better for them as well and their team. And that's typically the toughest sell. But once you get them on board, the execution will happen. If you don't have them, it won't happen.
Yep. I also see where that frontline leader, team leader, group leader, whatever you want to call that title, they are the first to be plugged in at a machine when somebody calls out sick unexpectedly or whatever. So they're taken out of that frontline leadership role, plugged into a machine to where they're being an operator now, but still held to those standards as if they, had oversight, and they don't have that. The allocation is that makes it tough. So how do you, what do you say to today's, top leader in, let's say, a bagged salad factory, to make sure that they're really focused on understanding that level? And then what do you say to that individual that finds themselves pinched between the two levels there? Any tips for those folks?
Well, I don't discount the fact that does happen, James. I mean, you have accidents that happen. You have all kinds of things that happen on the shop floor, factory floor, and those people are definitely the first line to get their hands dirty and get it fixed. I think that's part of the job in a sense, that you've got to staff appropriately where you have enough floaters, enough flexibility that you can move people around. And that's why I think that you really don't want to have that, that 4 or 5 to 1, more like a 12 to 1 kind of ratio. So you have a little bit of flexibility moving people about and fixing the problem you have. The other thing is you got to make sure they understand what goals really matter. Is throughput the most important thing, or is quality the most important thing? Those are different goals sometimes. And one of the big numbers in salad is what's called yield. Like you think about a head of lettuce, what percentage of that lettuce that you took off the truck from California is actually going to go in the bag? Well, clearly the consumer would like a 4 leaf. They want all the core gone, every outer leaf gone, any defect gone, right? That's what, of course, that costs more. So there's your balance, always in balance there, right? So you want to make sure you're putting out the best possible product, but you also want the lowest possible cost. So those kinds of things have got to be clear. And specs have got to be standardized, and people understand that's important and why it's important. And sometimes I would involve some of those frontline supervisors with plant tours. So we'd bring in a major retailer might want to see the facility, and we would involve them to make it feel some ownership of that sale and keeping that customer happy. And they really took that to heart. It's always a dangerous thing to do because those guys are liable to say anything sometimes, but you coach them up as best you can.
Yep. Good point.
So we want to respect everybody's time here. And generally what we do kind of after we get through a lot of this stuff is do kind of a lightning round of some questions.
Sure.
And we sort of have a list, and I'll let James go through them. But I actually have one I want to start with to kind of kick that off is, what is something that you're really excited about now that you're working on?
Well, we are part of the accelerator program at the Harbor Entrepreneur Center, and we're making some major adjustments to that. I'm very excited that some other, I don't want to announce it before it's announced, but we've got some additional resources in play, so it's going to be better than ever. We had our excellent graduating class last June, and we're going to have a much larger class in the class of 2026. But I think one of the things we're going to have is a lot more applicants. Sometimes if you only get 20 some applicants, you're going to pick the best 12 or so. But if you get 30, 40, or 50, we think, then you're starting to get really some outstanding opportunities that are immediately investable. Our goal is that at the end of the accelerator program, the investment community from greater South Carolina, but also the folks in Charlotte, Atlanta, come to town and say, well, I'm going to get there because I know there's some great ideas coming out of Charleston. And it's been difficult. The deal flow here isn't what it is in bigger cities. There's no hiding it, but there's a lot of smart people and a lot of folks that have come here from elsewhere that also have brought great ideas. So I think we need to find a way to help those folks get to the point where they're investable. And that's my role at the Harbor, is to try to get those people to have the understanding, the tools required to make an investment decision easy. So I think we've got one. I was excited. We saw one come through VentureSouth yesterday from our graduating class. So that's a great thing. Yeah. And I send them back to Cincinnati too. I'm involved in 2 funds up there, and I send them that way as well. So you get money where you can find it.
I was hoping we'd get a little inside scoop there, but you did good about keeping that close to the chest.
It's a service we all are going to need at one point in our life. We'll put it that way.
Yeah, we may have the recording of that pitch in our inbox, Ronnie, as VentureSouth members. We just haven't gotten to it yet. So yeah, that's awesome.
Good.
And Tom, just to clarify, this is work you're doing with the Harbor Entrepreneur Center and these startup companies as a volunteer.
That is correct. I haven't really worked officially for anybody for quite some time, and that's why I like it. I'm a grandfather first and foremost. I have 2 grandchildren in Mount Pleasant, so that's my number one job. And then we're doing a little more traveling than we did prior to my life on the road. It's funny because I hated traveling when I was in business, but now I really want to go and we're headed to some exotic places. So that's number one. But the Harbor allows me to be a little flexible, and I do help quite a bit on the accelerator. We're talking about doing a boot camp as well, which would be fun for people that aren't quite sure if they want to be into the entrepreneurial world. That should be announced for the fall of 26. And we've got some other exciting things happening as well. So yeah, that's a bunch of my hours these days in recruiting new mentors, recruiting new potential founders, and then executing against that. And it's like being a good teacher. It's a good professor. You continue to work with these people how long after they graduate. They call you because you're a resource. Happy to do that.
Yep, that's awesome. Well, the lightning round is going to be really short this round. So let's just pick, I think the most suitable for you is what you wish you knew in your 20s that you know now. What would that be?
I was very intimidated by senior management back then. I mean, every time somebody would come to town, I could hardly breathe, right? That was just part of me coming from a small town and seeing how these guys would come out. And I just wish I knew what I knew now, that they're not that smart. They don't work that hard. And they're human too. So I wish I would have just settled me down just a little bit on that. But that was I was a very green, very naive guy coming out of New Mexico, is where I grew up. And it was hard initially. So yeah, I wish that somehow could be a part. I had a beautifully gentle, wonderful first boss there that did his best, but I still had a ways to go for sure.
Okay, thank you for that. That's good. Ronnie, you want to go ahead and do the wrap up and key takeaways?
Sure. So I think that thank you, Tom, for being here. This has been a great conversation. I think I had a lot of key takeaways on this one. Definitely that, mayhem and chaos can sort of happen at any level, but there are certain places like transition that it definitely kind of takes some change makers to kind of take the lead and make those things move forward really well. And also kind of when you are in the midst of that, pulling back and going, what are the priorities here? Like, let's simplify things and figure out what's the priorities and fix one thing at a time so that, small steps create bigger steps. And that was one of my key takeaways that resonated with me. James, did you have any that you really honed in on?
Yeah, I think the prioritization piece, and one of the things that the late great Tracy, who was with Exit Realty, said to me once, he would just say over and over again, the power of one. So as Tom was talking, that conjured up thoughts of Jay, and really the power. In his case, he was selling houses, mainly out at Folly Beach. And so it was like, okay, there are all these houses, and how do you sell them, and all these clients. And his tactic was the power of one. Pick one client and really pledge to focus on that client and sell one property to that client. They don't need 100 properties. They only need one. So that kind of brought that back to the surface for me, and just visualizing what that Saturday must look like when you're in the war room with everybody trying to get your arms around a chaotic situation. Similar to what Hyundai is probably dealing with in Georgia right now with the ice raves last week. So how do you get through that? And it's really one bite at a time.
Start stacking wins. Start a winning streak somehow. I tell Condors, one of my advice points there is think big, but always start small. But most importantly, act now. Those three things. Think big, start small, act now. Get something done. Get like Ronnie said, start stacking so the steps will happen to a bigger solution. But you got to start somewhere, and inaction, and you can be frozen in those situations, and that obviously isn't serving anybody.
Yeah.
Yep. Very good.
Easy to do though, to get frozen in those moments when you're overwhelmed. Well, Tom, it was really great having you today. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm really excited to hear what's coming out of the Harbor Entrepreneur Center. So keep us posted on that. And until next time, we're Ronii Bartles and James Thompson for Mayhem to Mastery.
Before we cut out, Tom, just real quick to plug you, how do people learn more about you, your contact information, how to get a hold of you, or do you want to just be left alone? Or
I'm not really selling anything, but I am active on LinkedIn still. But I know I've stopped the world of pushing that too hard. But LinkedIn is easy, and I think I'm the only Thomas Browning in Mount Pleasant. So
and we'll put a link to your LinkedIn profile in the show notes. And as Ronnie said, thanks again, Tom. You're doing really great things here in the Charleston area and bringing a lot of knowledge to help a lot of people. Very much appreciate you coming in today and sharing your knowledge with us.
All right.
Thank you.
You owe me a drink.
You got it. You got it, bud.
You got it.
Thanks, Tom. Cheers.
Great day.
You've been tuning into Mayhem to Mastery, leading transformation from the middle, with your hosts, James Thompson and Ronii Bartles. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and on our website, concentricglobal.co. Thank you for joining us.